We begin with Missouri Republican Senator Roy Blunt, who sits on the Intelligence Committee, which has been conducting their own investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 campaign. It certainly feels extraordinary, Senator, in terms of the time we are in. But you heard Steve Bannon there say that he thinks the meat of this Mueller report is going to be about obstruction of justice. Have you felt any pressure from the president when it comes to the Senate investigation?
Have not, and actually because we have been involved in that investigation now for almost 2 years, I think most of the members on the Intelligence Committee have been very thoughtful in the way they approach both the president and the administration on this issue. I think the pressure from the president is the same pressure we all feel, which is let's get this over with. It would have been the reason not to slow down the investigation, as Mr. Bannon said, to change the leaders. But at the same time, when you look at how Director Comey had handled things the previous year with the Clinton investigation, the determination, I'm going to say that she did a lot of bad things, but none of them are worthy of indictment. One of those two things was a mistake, but probably the biggest mistake was not reporting directly to the Attorney General rather than to take this new obligation on himself to decide what was right and what was wrong. So I understand that, but I've always been of the view that anything that slows down the investigation is not a good thing, that we need to get the facts out there, get this behind us in a way that people thought that anybody that should have been talked to was talked to, any question that should have been asked was asked. And we've been trying to do that in the Senate committee, I think, in a very appropriate way. And remember, Cohen, who'll be testifying both to our committee privately and the House, I think, publicly next week. One of the charges against him was lying to Senate investigators when he was asked questions, and that's totally unacceptable.
Well, so he lied last time to Congress. He's admitted to that. Why are you having him back, and why do you believe him this time?
Well, I don't know that we believe him this time. We'll just have to see. I think the reason you have him back is when somebody lies to Congress in an investigation like this, the questions you might have asked the next witness don't get asked. Somebody you might have called doesn't get called. It's serious well beyond whatever Cohen might have said in that you misdirect the investigation. That's why it's so important that those kinds of charges be taken very seriously, and obviously they are, and he's going to go to jail because of it.
Do you have any concerns that your investigation is too narrow? I mean, Michael Cohen is now working with Manhattan prosecutors on some alleged financial crimes and questions about inaugural committee, which, as you heard, Steve Bannon says is the bigger issue, he thinks.
Well, I think, Margaret, the problem with all these investigations, which is why we don't do that totally independent special counsel anymore, Democrats and Republicans let that lapse, is not that they're too narrow, but they get too broad. I'm not sure that George Washington's expense account could stand up against the entire force of the federal government if you looked at everything related to everything as opposed to really focusing on what was supposed to be the charge here, which is collusion. Our Chairman Burr, said 2 or 3 weeks ago that we have so far found no evidence of collusion, and you can see everybody backpedaling now, House and Senate both, on the idea that collusion is going to be in the report. They want to come up with lots of other things that I think are going to be much more arguable than a pure finding of collusion would have been, because I don't think that's there.
That was in an interview with CBS News, and it was the comment from Senator Burr was, if it was written now, there was no evidence of collusion. But as you say, your committee's still investigating.
We are still, and you know, we'd like to have, frankly, a little more access to the Mueller investigation before we come to a final conclusion. His report will help us write our final report. We've given Mueller full access to all of our interviews, all of our investigation. We haven't had that reciprocated, and so we'll soon find out what else is out there that we might not know about.
Well, on that report, the House Intel Chairman, Adam Schiff, told ABC this morning that Democrats are going to subpoena that Mueller report if it is not made public, and to expect that the special counsel will be called to testify. Should we expect him to testify in front of the Senate? And can you actually enforce a subpoena to get the Justice Department to do something that they refused to do in the first place?
I don't know that you can. And, you know, the new Attorney General, Bill Barr, was very specific on this when asked during his confirmation what should happen, what should be released, what shouldn't be released. Should you release things you find out that don't lead to an indictment or might not lead to an indictment in the future? Should you release things that people did that are merely embarrassing? You know, again, the weight of the government here is very strong, And people need to think about that when they begin to demand, we need to know whatever you found out, whether it led anywhere or not.
And we should expect Mueller to testify before your committee in public?
I think we'll have to wait and see what's in the report.
I want to also ask you about this declaration of the national emergency that the president made.
Right.
Do you think Republican leadership in the Senate will allow for a vote on a resolution to try to block the emergency declaration? We know the House is moving forward with one.
I don't think we have a choice. I think the way that 74 law was written, the House has a vote, then we have to have a vote. It's a privileged motion. If it's written correctly, I don't have any reason to believe they won't write it
How will you
correctly. I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I don't like the process. I don't think that the emergency declaration law was written to deal with things that the president asked the Congress to do and then the Congress didn't do. It's never been used that way before. I want to look carefully at the law. I want to hear what the president's lawyers have to say about it. I really think the president would have been better served by, one, taking the money that he got in the bill he signed, two, using the transfer authority he had, and I am absolutely confident that those two amounts of money would be more money than could be spent between now and September the 30th. I think it's an unfortunate decision.
That's practically speaking, but in terms of clarifying what you just said, are you saying it is possible that what the president declared is unconstitutional?
No.
You believe he has full authorities to do this,
Well, I
to
don't know
bypass
that.
the power of the purse strings with Congress to achieve a policy outcome that Congress refused to deliver on?
No, I think there is a likelihood that he is within the law that Congress passed. But, you know, that was long before I got to the Congress. No president has used that law this way before. I think we're going to have to evaluate whether this is really the intention of an emergency. Is it really an emergency if, again, the president asked the Congress to do it and they failed to? That's different than the way this law has been used in the past.
So you could vote to try to block the president from moving forward with this emergency. You just haven't decided yet. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. It's also fair to understand that the president says he'll veto whatever passes the House and Senate. And so this will be decided in the courts. I think it's highly unlikely that the veto would be overridden in the House and probably not overridden in the Senate, either one. And so it's going to be decided in the courts, and I think it's a significant court decision.
Senator, thank you very much.
By the way, let me say on this, I do agree with what the president is trying to do here. I just think there is a more likely way to get it done.
And it's an important conversation about how our government functions.